Some Texans I've talked to, it does not resonate, although there is a group in Texas that it does resonate with.
That's former Austin bureau chief for the Houston Chronicle, Mike Ward, a veteran reporter with hundreds of bylines and decades of experience. Except a disturbing pattern emerged in his stories. Many people he quoted didn't appear to exist.
He committed the gravest sin in journalism. He made up sources, dozens and dozens of sources. That is the allegation against Mike Ward.
Ward quit when confronted, but the Houston Chronicle took an unusual step. It hired an outside investigative reporter to dig into just how long it had been going on, and they found several stories had to be retracted. So how does the paper now prevent it happening again and repair its relationship with its readers? Steve Riley is interim executive editor at the Chronicle.
So, Steve, let's begin with the fact that Mike Ward was an experienced reporter already with a deep history when he was hired by your paper. So you naturally make the assumption that he knows what he's doing. When did you twig to the idea that something was wrong?
Diana, this summer we got information that there could be some problems with some of Mike's sources, and we immediately started within our newsroom to check a limited number of stories to see if that indeed were the case. At that point, Nancy Barnes, who was then the executive editor, decided that we would go all out to try to figure out just how much of a problem we had.
And by all out, give us a sense of what you did.
Well, we looked and found an experienced national and international reporter who happened to be living in San Antonio, David Wood, a Pulitzer Prize winner who was freelancing now out of Texas. We contracted with him to come in and lead an investigation. He was aided by a couple of people, a researcher and another reporter, and they went out and looked for the everyday people in Mike's stories for the entire 4 years that he had worked for us. That was 744 bylines. And as it resulted, and as we reported last week, there were just over 100 sources that we could not confirm or verify.
It's a remarkable thing because, as we heard Brian Stelter say a moment ago, I mean, this is really what journalists trade on, is their own reputation, especially with their own colleagues. When he was confronted with this information, how did he react?
Well, Nancy was dealing with Mike after the initial work done within our newsroom. He indicated to her that the sources were real and they could eventually be found. We gave him a little time to do that, and nothing resulted, and he offered to resign, and Nancy accepted.
That contract of trust that we have is not just with our audiences, it's with each other in the newsroom. If I bring a script to an editor, that person should fairly assume I'm bringing them something that's real and true. They shouldn't even have to ask. What have you had to do to repair that kind of trust between journalists, colleagues in the newsroom?
Well, what you say is true. There is an element of trust. My normal job is as our investigative editor, and we do extensive fact checks, of course, on long-term stories, and we expect reporters to check every fact before they go into print. It's just not an average, ordinary thing for us to look at a reporter and say, give me the phone number and the email of this person you quoted from Tomball, Texas, because we're going to make sure they exist. There's a trust, certainly with someone of Mike's experience and reputation. We're still having discussions about what we want to do going forward, but it's safe to say that we will be making sure that reporters collect and keep the contact information for everybody they use as sources in their news reporting.
The question that still lingers, certainly for me, is why? Why would a journalist do this, especially someone who appears to be working toward the end of his career where he could go off into the sunset and say, look at the legacy I've left, instead of being remembered in this way?
Well, I want to emphasize that we cannot prove that these sources don't exist. What we were careful to say and try to communicate was that we could not find them. We could not verify them, and I really don't want to speculate on the whys because we don't know. Mike has not communicated with us in the preparation for this story, and we can't answer that question.
And how important was communicating with the readers, what you determined?
Oh, it was essential. There was never a thought, never a question about whatever we found going into this that we would communicate it.
Steve, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.